Hey there! Welcome to the Homey Developer video about flowcards. In this video, we'll show you how to create your own flowcards and add them to your Homey app. Let's just dive straight in. To add a new flowcard to your Homey app, open a terminal and make sure you're in the directory of your Homey app. Then type the command Homey app flow create. The first question is what type of flowcard you want to add. Now Homey knows three types of flowcards: when, and then. A when card, or we call this a trigger in developer language, is a card that your app can start, and all the flows that have chosen that card to start their flow will then be triggered. A condition card is a simple Boolean logic card. It returns either true or false. So a condition card is added in between other cards, so in between when and then, and it makes sure that the flow only continues when it's true. So an example for a condition card would be, it is a Monday. If it's not a Monday, the flow will stop. If it is a Monday, the flow will continue. And then the last, an action card, is a card that does something. So your app can then send a message to someone, or maybe pulsate the LED ring. So a user that adds your card will expect Homey to do something when that card is being run. For our first example, we'll choose a trigger card. The first question being asked is, what is the title of your flow card? So a trigger card should follow the sentence when, ... and then your flow card's title. So for the user, it should be a natural story that you're telling the user when they are reading their flow. In our example, we're going to trigger a flow card every 5 seconds. So we just call this when this card has been triggered, for the sake of example. The next argument is a hint. And a hint is a pop-up that the user can see if they need more information about your card and what it does. So our app starts this card every 5 seconds, so we'll just put that in here. This card will start every 5 seconds. The ID of your flow card, that's not visible to the user, but it's visible in your code. And you will reference your flow card in your code using this ID. So make sure it makes sense for you, and don't change it afterwards, because otherwise the flows of people will break. Let's just call ours trigger example. We do not want to use any arguments in this example just yet. Yes, we do want to use tokens actually. So a token is unique to a trigger card, and a trigger card can be started with some additional information. So let's say you have a trigger card, someone came home, and then there's a tag of the name of the user who came home. Then this allows other users who create a flow with that card to use that tag in other cards. For example, someone came home, and then say welcome home name, and the name is then the tag provided by the trigger card. So it makes flows even more dynamic. We want to use a token, and for our example, let's create a random number as a number token. So the title is a random number. It doesn't really make sense, sorry about that, but for the example, this is the easiest I could think of. Give a brief example of what your token can provide. Well, it's a random number, so just put in 13. Type is number. So the type of your token is very important, because some cards can use string cards or text cards or numbers or booleans or images. For example, if you have another flow action card that can send an image to a messaging app, that can require an image tag, but the message itself could require a text tag. So the type of your tag is really important, so make sure you get it right. We choose number because we have a random number. The name of your token is what we use in the editor to references or in the code. So we'll just call this a random number. We do not want to add more tokens, and that seems good. All right, now if you go back to our editor and we go to Homey Compose, Flow, Triggers, and now we see that the JSON has been created for our flow trigger. You can see the title, which is an internationalization object. You can see the hint, and you can see the token we've just added in this array. So you can add more than one token. In our example, we only use one. So now that we've created the manifest or the JSON of our flow card, we need to add some JavaScript. Open your app.js, and in your onInit method, get your flow card using the following API call. So we want to put it in a variable. It's the reference to our flow card. And let's call it card trigger equals to this.homey, which is how you access the Homey SDK, .flow, because it's in the namespace of flow, and then get trigger card. And the first argument of that method is the ID of the trigger card, which is the same as the file name of your JSON file. So trigger example. To be completely consistent, we also name our variable like that. Now, the only thing you have to do to trigger a flow is call the method card.trigger, and that's it. In our case, we use tokens, so we need one extra argument, and let's see what it is. So the first argument is tokens, and that's an object. And if we go back to our JSON, we know that the name of our token is called random number, so let's copy that and put it in the object as a key, and then the value can be math.random, because that's our random number, right? Now we want to round it as well. And we do that times 100. So we get a random number between 0 and 100. And this is how you trigger a flow card. Now, this only triggers when we start the app, because it's in the onInit method of our app. For this example, we wanted to trigger it every 5 seconds. So let's just add an interval to that. Set interval, and then wrap that or trigger in that, and execute that every 5,000 milliseconds. And now when we run this app, this card will trigger every 5 seconds. We'll just add a log here so we can monitor that. And let's run the Homey app. So about 5 seconds after the app is started, the card should trigger, which is now. So you see triggering here in the console. But now our card does trigger, but the user doesn't have created a flow with it. So your card only does something when it's being used in a flow. So let's go to the Homey web app and create a new flow. We call the flow test trigger. Oops. And then for the when card, we browse to the app, and then we say this card has been triggered. And as you can see, if I hover over the small little eye there, you can see the hint of your card appearing. Now, let's also have an action card here, and let's say speech, let's say something. Now remember that we added a token to this card. So we can now use that token, or users call it tags, in this other flow cards. So let's say random number is, and then tap this icon, tap random number. Now if we save this flow, every 5 seconds, you can hear that Homey is saying every... Random number is 41. I think it's clear. All right, let's disable this flow. Random number is 62. Thanks, Homey. And that's how easy it is to trigger a flow card you created. So it's up to the user what they want to do with it, and it's your job as an app developer to provide the building blocks for the user to create flows with that. Now let's continue with an AND card. To create an AND card, run the command Homey app flow create again, and now select the condition or the AND card. So what is the title of our example AND card? Let's say we want to make an AND card that is only true when it's a Monday. Okay, so it's a Monday is then our, let's capitalize that, is our flow card's title. So it follows the sentence and ... it's a Monday. So it still fits in the sentence that an entire flow can be. Well, this is so obvious it doesn't need a hint, so we can skip that. I think the ID looks good, and we do not want to use any arguments for this card, so everything seems good. Now let's go back to our editor and show conditions it's a Monday.json. Well, this is how simple it is to create a condition card. Let's go to app.js and register the card again. Now we get the card condition Monday equals this.homey.flow.get condition card. This time it's a Monday because that's the ID of the condition card. And now where we trigger in the previous example, this time it's the other way around. So Homey tells your app when to start the card, and to do that you need a run listener, and that's a method called register run listener, and it needs one argument, which is a callback function, and it should return a promise. So we make an async function, so every time your card is started, this function will then be called. And what you should do here, you should return either true or false, and dependent on that the flow will continue or not. So we need to know if it's a Monday or not. Well, let's create a new date object, for example, and then const Monday is now going to get day, I think. Get the day of the week using local time. So I'm pretty sure the first day is a Sunday in JavaScript, but let's just log it just to be sure. So we need to return true if the day, let's just call this day, right? It's much more pretty, equals 1. Because that's, if 0 is a Sunday, then Monday is a 1. Now let's just run this card and see if it works. So while this card is running, we can already create a new flow. Test condition. And we use, this flow is started as a trigger. It's just a generic trigger you can use to test your own flows. Now go to your app. It's a Monday. And then let's Homey say it's a Monday, if that's true. So let's see, our app is already running, still triggering the trigger card, but don't worry about that. And now we hit test here. And now you can see that an orange exclamation mark is there, which means today is not a Monday. Actually, today is day 6, today is a Saturday, which is correct because then day 0 is a Sunday and then day 1 is a Monday. Now what a user can do, they can invert this card. And that doesn't change anything for your code, it just means that if your card returns true, the flow should continue when it returns false, and vice versa. So the normal behavior is that a flow continues when your card returns true, but if the user presses invert, then the card inverts. However, the user won't see the difference yet because your title is always the same. So we've come up with a nice solution for that. Let's just stop our app here and let's get back to the JSON. And now you have to type these magic characters. These are also in the documentation. And this basically means when the card is inverted, show this, and otherwise show that. So the left-hand side is when the card should return true, so the normal state, when it's a Monday. And then this part, so after the pipe, means when it's not a Monday. So if you run this card, or if you run the Homey app with this updated title, when we go back to the flow for web, you see nothing's changed because we didn't invert it yet. But now we're going to invert the card, and you see that it's not a Monday is there. And now if we test the flow, it will continue. Well, what Homey said isn't true, but the flow did continue because it's not a Monday. So to be completely consistent, this is the right flow. And that is how you create a condition card for your Homey app. Now, for the final of the 3 cards, let's create a then card or an action card. To do that, you probably already guessed, go to Homey app flow create in your terminal and select the action. What is the title of your flow card? So let's just log something to the console, but this time, maybe you saw it in the first video, let's make it somewhat more difficult. So we want to log something to the console. We don't want a hint this time. The ID can just be log, it's easier to type. And this time let's use an argument. So the placeholder is type some text, for example. So the placeholder is what the user will see in the input field if they haven't filled something in yet. So it's usually a little bit italic, light gray text, so just to give them a hint or a suggestion what they can write here. The type of the argument, there are multiple types for arguments. So they are very similar to the arguments you see in websites. For example, we have a drop down. We have an input field for text. We have an input field for numbers. We even have a slider for numbers. We have an autocomplete field, which is a dynamic search field. Let's say you want to search a Spotify playlist. Your app can't provide it up front, so we can then search dynamically. We have a date field. We have a time field. We have a color field, just for colors. And we have a drop token field. And that one is a little bit special. It's where a user can drop a token in there and you can specify the type of the token. So let's say you want to create a flowcard action that sends an image to a messaging app. You would use a drop token image field and the user can then drop their image tag in there and then you receive that when your flowcard runs. We just want a text field. We want to let the user type something and log that into our console. The name of our argument, let's just call it user text. And we do not want to add any more arguments. Seems good. All right, now let's go back to the editor. And our card has been created here. ID is log, title is an internationalization object, would log something to the console. And then we have args, and the argument is of type text, the name is user text, and the placeholder is type some text. Now let's create the JavaScript accompanying this card. So const card action log is this.homey.flow.get action card log. So this is the reference to the action card, and now we need a run listener again, which is also an async method. And now we want to log the value that the user typed in to the console. Now, how do we get that? Well, easy. First argument is called args from arguments, and we can just get the value from that. So the name is user text, so we can just get that from args. By the way, if you're not familiar with this pattern, it's the same as this. So args.userText. And now we want to say the user logs, and then let's use template literals. Like this. Oh, I'm missing S here, or equal sign. And now we can log what the user types. So let's just see if it works. In the meantime, while our app is building and uploading, I'm going to create a new flow, test action, oops. And the trigger is this flow started, then log something to the console. This is my first log. Let's save this flow. So our flow is still triggering from the previous card, but if we now test this, you can see the user logs, this is my first log. So that's your first argument in the flow card. And you can use that argument then to pass it through to an external service or whatever you want to do with it. This is how you get arguments. Now, this doesn't look really great to the user. If they read this flow from top down, it says, log something to the console, this is my first log. Well, that's a pretty bit ugly. So to fix that, we go back to our JSON and we create a new attribute called title formatted. And it's also an internationalization object. And in that title, you can specify where to put the arguments. Let's just show you. Log, and then we have double brackets, and then the name of your argument to the console. So let's just run this and see how that looks. You see, it has been placed in the text instead of at the end of the text. So log, this is my first log to the console, is actually a sentence people can read without thinking too much. So we really recommend all the apps to use title formatted if they are using arguments. You'll actually be notified that as well. If you scroll a little bit up, you will see that we warn you that it will become required in the future. That's how you create an action card. One more thing I want to show you with action cards. So a card is an async method. That means that it can also reject, or you can throw inside of that card. So let's just throw inside of this card. Throw new error, test error. Oops. And now let's run this card. How will that look like for the user? So if we test this card, you can then see that the error appears, and you also see this red exclamation mark in your card. So it might occur that your card errors. Let's say you want to talk to a remote service, but there's no internet connection, or the service is down. You need to provide a great error message to a user so they know why their flow isn't working as expected. So the last thing you need to know before you can call yourself a flow master is how to attach a flow card to a driver. In Homey, you'll often see that a device has more functionality attached to it. For example, a Philips Hue light bulb has a specific flow card, blink the light, and a Sonos speaker might have a card, play a sound. Those are device-specific functionalities that Homey doesn't include in its base system because they are so specific to those devices. Now, how do you add a flow card only for a certain device? Easy. In your terminal, type Homey app driver flow create. And then the first question is, for which driver do you want to create the flow? Well, we have one driver from our previous video, our light bulb. So we select that. And then let's say we want an action card. And let's say we want to blink the light. We do not need any hint. Blink the light is a great ID. We don't want any arguments. Seems good. And now what you see is that instead of the file being created under Homey composed flow actions, it's being created under drivers, driver.flow.composed.action. This means that this flow card is only for this device or for this driver. Now what we still need to do is attach JavaScript with a run listener to this card. And where do you do that? So remember, a driver has one instance for multiple devices, and a device has an own instance. But there's only one flow card for multiple devices. So you should always register your flow card listeners for devices in your driver and not in your device. Otherwise they get overwritten every time a new device has been added. So go to driver.js. In the onInit method, that's a great place for flow card listeners. Let's just call it const card is this.homey.flow.get action card. And the ID of the action card, you can find it here, is blink the light. And then call card.register run listener. And then provide an async method that can blink the light. But for which device, you ask? Great question. So remember that the first argument of the function was argument. All right, so the name will always be device. So args.device is actually an instance of homey.device. So what you can do here is pretty simple. Just await args.device.blink. And now if we go back to device.js, and let's say we add a new method here called blink. Oops. Then this method will be called by driver.js when this card is being executed, because args.device is a reference to the instance of the device being called. Let's just try that out. Homey app run. And what you now will see, so I'll create a new flow when this flow is started. then you can see that the card you just created is not under your app, it's under the device. And that's what you wanted. And there it is, blink the light. So you can select that. Let's give the flow a name and test it. And now you can see in the console that the device is blinking. And that's how you create a flow card specific for a device. If you want to trigger it as well, it works kind of similar. So check out the documentation how to provide your device in the trigger method, and then Homey will take care of the rest. And that concludes this video. So you've learned how to create a when card, an and card, and a then card, and you've also learned how to attach those to a device. So good luck in creating these great building blocks for users to create flows with, and see you in the next video.